firms sometimes charge a different price in different markets. There's no reason to think, for example, that the price of a good in a high-income part of Manhattan would be the same as the price of the same good in rural Texas. Those are markets that are very distinct. The willingness to pay is very different. If a firm can separate these two markets, segment these markets, they'll have a strong incentive to charge a different price in different markets because of the willingness to pay may vary across the markets. So I want to talk about this situation where you'll have price discrimination by segmented markets, sometimes geographically segmented. It's not necessarily geographically distinct, but that's an easy way to motivate this. And we're going to imagine a situation where a firm has a monopoly in each one of these separate markets. So let's take a look at this. And we'll think about the decision of a firm to price in New York and in rural Texas. And I'm going to draw the demand function in each one of these things. And we'll imagine that the firm has the same cost of producing in both. Okay, so we've got the same cost of production. Okay, so the marginal cost is the same across the two markets. But let's imagine a situation where the demand curve in New York is relatively inelastic compared to the demand in Texas. Now, for monopolists, how they choose output and prices is going to depend on the associated marginal revenue curve. So let's imagine the marginal revenue curve for New York that looks like that, and we'll have a marginal revenue curve like this for Texas. So the firm, looking at these two demand conditions in the two different markets, will choose where marginal cost equal to marginal revenue in New York. And there's the monopoly price in New York City. Okay. Where the demand curve is flatter, that is where the demand is more elastic in rural Texas, they choose a quantity such that marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. Now, in both markets, price exceeds marginal cost. Absolutely. But what you see is that the price in the market that has inelastic demand relative to the other market will see a higher price. So you'll tend to see these higher prices in markets where there's more inelastic demand. And so we have this easy comparison where price exceeds marginal cost in both markets, but where you have higher prices, final prices in the market where there's more inelastic demand. Now, an important aspect of this is that you don't want to allow arbitrage. When they're physically separated, it's going to be hard to take advantage of these differences in price. Now, what do we mean by arbitrage? That's buying low and selling high. So if it were easy to take this product and move it from rural Texas, where prices are low, to New York, where prices are high, you would have an incentive for somebody, not this firm, but somebody else to buy the product in Texas and move it to the other market where the prices are high. So you need to have a truly segmented market so that the arbitrage opportunities are taken away in order for this price discrimination story to work. That's in part why I use the regional segmentation, because it's harder to imagine for a lot of products that it'd be worth it to move it from Texas to New York. You'd have transportation costs, and people would need to know about the differences in price. I mean, there's all sorts of things that would make this difficult. Now, if this was not two physically separated market, but two consumers side by side in the same market, that would be trickier to enforce that. Now, there'd be ways that you might do that. Say, well, there's a contract that if you buy this product, you can't resell it to somebody else. I mean, there are ways in which firms might try to limit that arbitrage activity. It needs to be segmented in some ways. But the bottom line with this, with segmented markets in a monopoly position, there's every reason to believe that the prices are going to be different across the different markets, even if the costs of production are exactly the same. So that's another example of price discrimination that gives more nuance and more real-world flavor to the story about price choices by monopolists.